Australia, 500 new diabetics are diagnosed daily in Australia. Eesh. And remember, in case of sickness, the first thing we look at is why. Why are so many people suffering from diabetes? So what we need to look at is what's changed, and one of the biggest things that's changed is the diet. Never in the history of mankind have human beings eaten so many carbohydrates. When you look at all the different countries in the world, every country always had a carbohydrate as part of the diet. So we look at Asia and it was predominantly rice. We look at Italy, it was predominantly probably pastas and breads. We go to the South Pacific Islands, the starches were sweet potatoes, cassavas. We go to the United Kingdom and the carbohydrate was probably oats. They're big oat eaters. So just an illustration to show that every country in the world has always had a carbohydrate as part of their basic diet. But we've come to a time on planet Earth where it's almost as if all the carbohydrates from all the different countries have been put together. And people have become high carbohydrate consumers. So I'd like to do an assessment of these carbohydrates. Probably about 50 years ago, they were called starches. So carbohydrates. What would most people have had for breakfast? Cereal. We know that cereal is popular because there's a whole aisle devoted to it. And cereal is very popular because it's go to kitchen, open packet, put in bowl, put milk on it, goes like wet tissue paper down the hatch in 10 minutes, is that right? Out the door. It's a very easy meal. You don't have to go to the stove and get the food and cook. It's just a very, very easy meal. And I think the reason why people are looking for quick breakfast, because so many people go to bed too late, because they're either watching television or they're on the computer or on the phone, games, and so many people aren't getting enough sleep, so they go to bed late, so they wake up late and they just want something very quick. And so here we have cereal. Another quick one is bread. And these two don't take you very far. And so mid-morning, many people reach for cakes, cookies, pretzels, chips, donuts. So I'm just going to say etc. because there's a lot of them. Another carbohydrate snatched from another country is pizza. So from Italy you could say the pizza and the pastas came. I'm a 5th generation Australian Scottish descent, and I grew up every night we'd have sausages or chops, mashed potato, frozen peas or beans every single night except for Sunday. Then Mum would cook roast lamb. And I thought everyone in the whole wide world ate like that. Because and you think that as a child, my relatives, neighbours, and as a Scottish descent, we went to the Presbyterian church, everyone ate the same. I didn't think there was anything else in the world other than white bread, because that's all we ate, or white sugar. It wasn't until I was a teenager and started going a bit further afield that I noticed actually there are other foods that people eat. I didn't know what pizza or pasta was, but I don't think there's a home today that doesn't know what a pizza and a pasta is. Rice is another carbohydrate. Potatoes, another carbohydrate. My husband's a 5th generation Irish descent, and every main meal must contain potatoes. And last and least in nutritive value, the pure crystallized acid extracted from the sugarcane plant is the refined sugar. And you can see what I mean when I say I don't think anyone chose to eat that way. It's just quick, it's just fast. And we're such a fast society today that people get hungry and they reach for the fast. Now, when I was in the rainforest raising my children, this was not fast food. down on the farm, this isn't fast food. It takes a while to make cereal, to make bread, to make cakes, to make pizza, to make pasta, to cook rice, to cook potatoes. It's not fast food, it's slow food. What's fast food on the farm? Fruits and vegetables. Pick an apple off the tree, eat. Pick a cucumber, eat. Pick a tomato, eat. The fast food is fresh fruit and vegetables. So if I'm travelling and the people I'm about to stay with say, we're a bit concerned, what do we feed you? I said, it's real easy, fast food. Fruits and vegetables. I'm very happy with fruits and vegetables. That's your true fast food. But I want to show you the result of what is happening today with so many people living on this diet. All of this food breaks down in the gastrointestinal tract to a singular structure called glucose. We touched on that yesterday. And the glucose gets absorbed out of the gut and into the blood, then goes on the M1 main highway straight to the project manager, which is the liver. And then the liver determines where the glucose goes. And the first place it'll send the glucose is to the cell. Now we're going to have a look at what happens in the cell. So the glucose goes in, and it goes in under the action of insulin. So I'm going to flip over to my next board, and while we're looking at insulin, I want to show you what the pancreas produces. The pancreas, yesterday we looked at the pancreas and its role in digestion and what it releases into the gut. But now I want to look at what the pancreas releases into the blood. It releases two hormones. One is insulin, and insulin's the key that unlocks the door to get the glucose out of the blood and into the cell. So insulin's role in the body is to get the blood sugar levels down when they go too high. And that high carbohydrate diet releases high glucose, and so from the pancreas demands high insulin to get it out of the blood and into the cell. There's another hormone that it produces, and that's glucagon. And glucagon, the other hormone released by the pancreas, gets the blood sugar level up again. So if the blood sugar level goes too low, then the brain says to the pancreas, stop the insulin, release glucagon to get it up again. But when a person's blood sugar level goes low, what do they usually do? Reach for a cup of coffee with 2 teaspoons of sugar, reach for a candy. Will that get it up? Oh yes. Boom, up again. And the brain says, stop the glucagon, release the insulin. Down again. Stop the insulin, release the... Can you see what's happening here? We've got many pancreases today that are just wearing out. See, what every cell in the body needs, requires, and what the pancreas needs and requires to function well is a steady, sure, slow release of glucose. And that's what the 3 essentials give it. Fibre. Fibre slowly releases the glucose. Protein is broken down in the stomach, so it also gives a steady, sure release of glucose. Fat. Yes, fat helps to slowly release the glucose. That's what the pancreas needs, and it's what every cell in the body needs. So the first place that the glucose is sent is into the cell. It goes into the cell under the action of insulin. It goes through a 20-step pathway. And this 20-step pathway delivers to us 2 units of energy. Isn't that why we eat? The end result of the 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And pyruvate, as the chemical form of glucose, it gets fed into the next section. It's an 8-step pathway, and even though it's only an 8-step pathway, it delivers to us an impressive 36 units of energy What makes the difference? How come a 20-step pathway only gives 2 units and an 8-step pathway gives 36? The difference is oxygen. This pathway produces energy by the process of fermentation. But on a high carbohydrate diet, we've still got glucose left over. And so now the liver causes it to be stored inside, particularly the muscle cell, little molecules of glucose stored in the muscle cell, just waiting to be used. It's called glycogen stores. Glycogen is the name given to quick-release glucose stores. Glycogen. In fact, I'd like to suggest, before we move on, that glycogen is the diabetic's best-kept secret. Because when your blood glucose levels go low, and you're needing fuel, all you have to do is get on the exercise bike or jump down and do push-ups. When you start moving the body, it causes a release of your glycogen stores. They get plucked, sent down the pathway, plucked, sent down the pathway, plucked, sent down the pathway. An amazing process. On a high carbohydrate diet, we've still got glucose left over because only so much can be stored in the cell, particularly the muscle cell. And when it's in the muscle cell, it can only be used by the muscle cell. It's like it's in a prison. But the liver can also store glycogen, only a small amount, but the glycogen that's stored in the liver can go everywhere in the body. But on a high carbohydrate diet, we've still got glucose left over, and now it gets stored in the most amazing fuel depot in the body. It's called fat cells. And what's happening on this high carbohydrate diet? People are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Have you noticed? What I've given you there is just the basic science. And you can see by what I've shown you here that fat doesn't make you fat. What makes you fat? It's this high carbohydrate diet that the body just can't use all that glucose. And so then it gets stored. And that's the role of insulin, to get the glucose out of the blood and into the pathway. But there's too much. Well, okay, some stored as glycogen. There's still left over. Okay, it's stored as fat. There's no doubt about it that diabetes was not on planet Earth until sugar was refined. Hippocrates, 400 years BC, no mention of diabetes. So there's no doubt about it that sugar plays a role. It takes 1 yard of sugar cane to deliver 1 teaspoon of sugar. It's a pure crystallized acid. And when it goes into the body, blood sugar levels go boom. And then the brain says, quick, insulin, get it down. And then there's this constant whiplash, which eventually wears pancreases out. But before pancreases get worn out, something else happens. The cell develops insulin resistance, as if the cell says, I'm sick of the sight of you. Go away. And yet the blood sugar level's remaining high because the insulin couldn't get it in the cell because there's insulin resistance, and the brain says to the pancreas, more insulin, more insulin. What's the body going to do now? That high glucose will spill out in the urine. Diabetes mellitus means sugar in the urine. But as you will see, that insulin resistant can be turned around very quickly. But something else has come on the scene. Something else has come along that's caused an absolute explosion. In the 1950s, Dr. Norman Bulag in Mexico put wheat through intensive crossbreeding. The aim was to create a plant with a high yield of grain. When I was a little girl, wheat used to grow that high. Have you noticed how high it grows now? It only grows that high. We had a 19-year-old wheat farmer do our program, and he was really shocked when I told him that wheat used to grow that high because he's never seen it. He's 19. He's the son of a wheat farmer. Because it all grows this high now. You see, when it grew that high and it had a heavier yield, the stalk would break before they could harvest it. So back to the drawing board, they eventually created a plant that only grows that high with a thick stem because of the heavy yield of grain, sometimes 6 to 8 times per plant. So Dr. Norman Bulag got a Nobel Prize in 1976 for his hybridized wheat. They did it to help with the starvation crisis in Africa, in India, in Mexico. But you can't improve on God. This wheat was rushed through with no safety studies. Does that sound familiar? Rushed through with no safety studies. They didn't think they had to do safety studies on wheat, but only now are they starting to see the problem that it's caused. When they hybridized the wheat, they changed 2 main things. They changed the protein or the gluten structure, and that's why when people have irritable bowel, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, we looked at it last night, it has an irritating effect on the colon. That's why those foods must stop to heal that colon. Do I eat wheat? Sometimes. Not much, doesn't have any effect on me because I don't have any health problems. But if I had any health problems, I wouldn't touch it. But what it also did is what I particularly want to explain to you tonight is what it did to the starch structure. Because you have a look at this. How many of these are wheat? Wheat, wheat. In this list, you've probably got about 10 or 15 different ones. Wheat, wheat. The majority on our carbohydrate list are from the wheat plant. So what it did, and I'm going to go to another screen to do this one, what it did, it created a starch called amylopectin A. Amylopectin A is the name of the starch that was created in the hybridization process of the wheat. So it's not naturally in that wheat. In the hybridization process, this was created. It's amylopectin A. And amylopectin A, let me show you what it does. Let's say this is blood sugar levels. Amylopectin A gets the blood sugar level up very high, very fast, then you've got that corresponding dump. That's the amylopectin A. Let's compare it to some other starches. Amylopectin B is found in bananas and potatoes. And if you're familiar with the glycemic index of food, you will know that bananas and potatoes, they get the blood sugar level up pretty high, pretty fast. So let's look at the B. The B goes fairly high, fairly fast, not as high, not as fast, and not as low. That's your B. Amylopectin C is found in beans, so legumes, chickpeas, lima beans, lentils, black-eyed beans, cannellini beans, kidney beans, so many different beans. What does it do? Amylopectin C gets a nice steady rise and a nice steady drop. That's your C. And every cell in the body requires, desires that steady, consistent delivery of fuel. It actually gives the pancreas a break. There's no, quick, we're too high, oh no, we're too low, oh no, we're too high. No, it's just this steady, consistent delivery of fuel. That's what it needs. So let's have a look at the glycemic index. Let's have a look at where the wheat sits on the glycemic index. What is the glycemic index? The glycemic index is a reading on how quickly the glucose in food is released into the blood. So the glycemic index, say baseline, is 55. So anything under 55 is considered low GI. And that's great for the diabetic because low GI foods give a nice, steady, slower but sure release of glucose. All your berries, they sit at about 26, and that's why berries are a great fruit for diabetics because they're low on the glycemic index. Grapefruit. Grapefruit, that sits at 25. And that's not a surprise, because it's not a really sweet fruit. Banana sits quite high. So you look at a cherry, and you look at a banana, and you think, well, why is the banana high and the cherry low? It's all about the fibre structure. Under a microscope, the fibre structure in the banana is loose, so the glucose is released quickly. In the berries, the cherries, the fibre structure is tight, so there's a slower release of glucose. It's like sweet potato and the Irish potato. Irish potato, high on the glycemic index. Sweet potato, low. Well, what's the difference? Under a microscope, the fibre structure in the sweet potato is tight, so it's a slower release of glucose. In the white potato, the fibre structure is loose, so quick release. You can Google glycemic index, and it'll give you a reading of where different foods sit on the glycemic index. Where does sugar sit? Whether sugar is white or tan or brown, sugar sits at 59, and that is no surprise. So let's have a look at where, let's see if I can rub this out. I can. Good, good, good. Coming back to this. That's no surprise. Where does white, let's say white bread. So all foods made with white flour, it sits at 69. How could that be? It's because of the amylopectin A. Remember, it's not naturally in wheat, it's one of the side effects of the hybridization. Once you start playing with God's creation, you don't know what's going to happen. That's why genetically modified foods are actually dangerous foods, because they have the potential to actually interfere with and interrupt our own DNA. Where does wholemeal sit? So you call it whole wheat. So the whole wheat bread, it sits at 72. How could that be? Because the whole wheat is not refined, it's got more amylopectin A in it. Yes. I had a guest do our program. She said, I'm a diabetic. I was diagnosed at 65. I'm now 69. I do everything they tell me. I have whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta, whole wheat cereal, whole wheat. And every 6 months I go to the doctor and he puts me on more insulin. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. She said, I'm not like the lady down the road. She has sodas, she has candies, she has cakes. I don't do that. She said, in fact, she started crying. She said, you've just solved the puzzle. Now, if you want to explore this in more detail, there's a book called Wheat Belly by Dr. William Davis. It's a bestseller. And I'm very thankful to Dr. William Davis. There are actually a few books that talk about it, but he defines it very nicely. And he shows what happened to the wheat. And he also shows that by the late 70s, this hybridized wheat went worldwide. Do you know what that means? By the 1990s, let's have a look at this. By the 1990s, every cereal, every bread, every cake, every donut, pretzel, etc., every pizza, every pasta, what's it made out of? The hybridized wheat. No wonder diabetes has exploded. Because how many diabetics are told to have the whole wheat? And yet, are they healing from their diabetes? No. No, they're not. Something else has come into the equation. And it all happened around the time of the let me get it right, the Industrial Revolution, got it right? It all happened around the time of the Industrial Revolution, where they started to create a lot more chemicals, a lot more chemical cleaning products, a lot more chemical fabrics. But what I wanted to specifically look at is what they did to the oils. Now, before the Industrial Revolution, depending on where you lived, it was near the equator, it was either coconut oil or palm oil, and if it was in the Mediterranean, it was usually olive oil or maybe sunflower oil. Sunflower seeds are soft seeds. I've had people say to me their grandmother used to grind the sunflower seeds, squeeze them and get the oil. And if it was in the more northern countries, it was usually butter or cream from organic cows. And if it was further up, it was usually fish, seals, whale blubber, depending on where you lived on the planet. And by the way, diabetes was very low, and as you'll see in my next lecture, heart disease was very low. But in the Industrial Revolution, they created equipment so they could get oil out of hard seeds. You see, the olive oil is extracted from the flesh of the plant. Women could have presses in their kitchen to press the flesh of the olive to get the oil. And the coconut oil is extracted from the flesh of the plant. So they grate the coconut and they squeeze it with water and they get the milk, and then in a saucepan, double saucepan, or traditionally just in the sun, it would separate into the oil. So in their kitchen, women could do it. But to get oil out of a hard seed, that needs high heat chemical equipment. And if you go into the supermarket, you can see them. They're in clear plastic bottles. And they're the cheapest oils: vegetable oil, canola oil, soy oil, corn oil, safflower oil. They're the dangerous oils. And when they come into the body does not recognize them because their whole structure has been changed by the heating and by the chemicals. And they're the oils that can block this cell to inhibit insulin and glucose getting in and out of the cell. So they also can be a contributing factor. So as you can see, it's not just one thing that causes diabetes. It can be a whole lot of things, but I believe this high carbohydrate diet, high sugar diet, again, carbohydrates aren't bad. My husband would never forgive me if the potatoes stopped. I'll be thrown out of Asia if I told them to stop eating rice, is that right? No, carbohydrates are not bad. It's only when they're overdone and refined. When they're overdone and refined, and predominantly the carbohydrate people eat today in large amounts is made from wheat. Can you get a wheat that hasn't been hybridized? You can. It's called spelt. One lady said, "How do you spell that?" Spelt. So spelt, Enkenhorn is another one. Because they have not been hybridized, they don't have the amylopectin A in them. A man said to me, he was in his mid-60s when I saw him at a retreat in Alabama. He said, 20 years ago, when I was in my 40s, I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic, and I was told that if I ate beans every day, lentils or chickpeas or lima beans, etc., I would not get diabetes. So I did, and he said, and I never got diabetes. And you can see why, by what I showed you here. It gives a lovely, steady, sure consistency of fuel. So when we say a plant-based diet, a person can be living on a carbohydrate diet and be on plant-based, is that right? No, a plant-based diet is a balanced diet. And in Genesis 1:29, God tells Adam and Eve the best fuel. So I want to have a look at that diet because I don't believe we can improve on the Garden of Eden diet. So we're going to have a look at the food, and we're going to have a look at the protein content and the carbohydrate content. And God said, behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed. What's a herb-bearing seed? A herb-bearing seed is a grain, and we have so many grains: wheat, rye, barley, oats, amaranth, buckwheat, millet, so many grains. And a legume. What's a legume? A legume is chickpeas, lima beans, black-eyed beans, cannellini beans, so many legumes. And seed. So what's a seed? That's sesame seed, sunflower seed, pumpkin seed, chia seed, flaxseed or linseed. Grains are high in protein, but they are also high in carbohydrate. And as we looked at earlier, it's this high carbohydrate that's causing a lot of problems. Grains aren't bad, but when they're predominantly the main food in the diet. So you look at cereal and toast for breakfast, sandwiches, lunch, pasta for tea, donut, pretzel, mid-morning, mid-afternoon. What's that? That's 100% wheat. So that is a diet that absolutely can contribute to diabetes. Legumes. Legumes are high in protein, but they are just medium to low in carbohydrates. The fact is that the legumes are about the third the carbohydrate that you will find in the grain. Seeds, they are high in protein, low in carbohydrate. So God said, behold, I've given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree in the which of the trees a fruit-bearing seed. What's a fruit-bearing seed? That's a nut. And we have so many nuts. We have hazelnuts, pecans, walnuts, almonds, Brazil, so many nuts, cashews, macadamia. Nuts are high in protein and low in carbohydrate. So an easy way to get the blood sugar levels more stable is to decrease the grain part of the meal and increase the legume, nut, seed part of the meal. That's a very easy way to do it. So what I'd like to look at now is I'd like to look at how the sustain me principles affect diabetes. Sunshine. Why is sunshine important with diabetes? Because when the ultraviolet rays from the sun hit the skin, they convert a form of cholesterol just under the skin to vitamin D. And vitamin D is essential for the absorption of calcium and minerals inside the body. Your pancreas is made up of cells, and on the DNA there's 2,500 receptor sites for vitamin D. Vitamin D is an important part to be able to have a healthy functioning pancreas. Use of water. We should be drinking at least 8 glasses of water a day. Start early. What 8 glasses of water a day? It allows the release. Let's go back, and I want to show you what keeping adequately hydrated does is between meals it allows the release of glycogen. Because what have diabetics been told? How often have they got to eat? Every 2 hours? Now yesterday when we went on our journey through the gastrointestinal tract, we discovered that our nutrients are absorbed in our small intestine. Do you know what that means? When our stomach is empty, we're still getting nutrients. Most people that have the blood sugar level low between meals is because they're dehydrated. And what helps to get that water inside the cell is that little crystal of Celtic salt. A crystal of Celtic salt. In my next lecture, when we look at heart, I'm going to look at salt in more detail. But the whole salt, which is Celtic salt or Baja salt, they're hand-harvested sea salts, and they're collected from pristine sea, coastal sea areas. The Celtic salt is a hand-harvested seed from the coast of France in Brittany, French government has declared 4 million acres heritage zone to keep it pristine. That's nice to hear, isn't it? But it contains 82 minerals, and when you put that salt in your tongue, the magnesium in the salts pulls the water inside the cell, which helps to release these glycogen stores. And I also mentioned to you that when you exercise and your body starts to need more fuel, and the body quickly sees that you're not digesting food, it's early morning, it'll start plucking the glycogen stores. And you know what's amazing? When you run out of glycogen stores, the body starts breaking down your fat stores. Because that's what fat is. It's just stored fuel. So being well hydrated and also moving the body, whether it be push-ups, whether it be on the rebounder, whether it be exercise back, what that will do is get blood sugar levels up by releasing your stored fuel. Because as you saw yesterday, we need to eat, then rest. Let the stomach do its work. So water is vital in maintaining blood sugar levels. Right, well, we might just start it here. Sunshine. We've looked at the importance of sunshine for vitamin D and its importance for getting minerals into the body, but also maintaining the DNA of the cells. Use of water. Ideally 8 glasses of water a day. And that little bit of salt. The whole salt, Celtic salt. How much? Probably the size of a sesame seed. If you're not used to it, start with that. And remember, it will help release your glycogen stores. Sleep. We're going to be looking at sleep later in the week, and especially the hours before midnight. The hours before midnight, in fact, at the moment, it's between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. that melatonin is released. And melatonin is your fix and rejuvenate nighttime hormone. That is the hormone that's responsible for the increase in healing while we sleep. When you lay your body down in bed at night, you know you're laying your body on nature's operating table. So while you sleep, and the release of these hormones, it allows the healing of the pancreas. If you don't go to bed till 2 a.m, you might lay yourself on nature's operating theatre, but the surgeon's left the surgery. The surgeon's only active between 9, well, it's most active between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. I used to work in an operating theatre, and you can't work unless you've got your whole team there. So it's between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. that you've got the whole team there for the surgery on healing the pancreas while you sleep. And later in the week when we look at sleep, I'm going to show you all the processes that happen in the sleep, how you can increase that, and how you can train your body back into 8 hours a night. Here's God's perfect mathematical formula: 8 hours to work, 8 hours to play, 8 hours to sleep. Trust in God. Thank Him every day for the condition that your pancreas is in right now, even if your pancreas is not working well and you are on insulin. Thank Him for your pancreas, thank you for its ability to heal, and thank Him that tonight you're going to learn how you can revive your pancreas. See, one young man came to our retreat, he's only 19 with type 1 diabetes. He said to me, my specialist said my pancreas is dead. I said, is it gangrene? What's dead? If there's blood going through that pancreas, it's alive. And we live in an incredible body that has an inbuilt ability to heal itself. I'll tell you his story in a minute, but he was with us 4 weeks, and after 3 weeks he went from 90 units of insulin a day down to 10 units of insulin a day. Was his pancreas dead? No, it wasn't dead. His pancreas started to revive because it was given the right conditions. That 90 units of insulin allowed him to eat a high carbohydrate, high sugar diet. So when he started eating our food, which was high fibre, generous proteins and great fats, he didn't need that much insulin. So little by little, he started to drop his insulin levels. In Leviticus 17:11, the Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood. If there's blood going through any part of your body, it's alive. There's life, and it can be revived. So let me show you why the blood's called the life of the flesh. Because in the blood is the carrier of oxygen. That's why it's important to breathe through your nose, breathe long, slow and deep. I call it God's LSD, long, slow, deep. Breathing in and out through the nose, and it will increase the oxygen content in your body. The blood also carries the nutrients, and we are the ones that choose what we eat. And as we're looking at, there are some foods that are healing, and there are some foods that are not healing. Yes. We are the ones that choose. Are we eating a high carbohydrate, high refined diet, or are we eating a diet that's high in fibre, great proteins, good fats? We choose. And it's our God-given right to choose what we do to our body. And the food that we eat determines the quality of our blood. Water. The blood also carries the water, and the blood carries away waste. All living machinery has waste, and our living machinery, the human body, is no exception. What an incredible body we live in, and the healer is the blood. So thank God every day for exactly where you are and what you have right now. Because my daughter Emma, when she was 5, she said, "Mum, I'm going to grow up in a minute." Now we know she didn't grow up in a minute. We know she took her 10 years to grow up. And when we're sick, don't we want to be better in a minute? When I broke my arm, I have to tell you, I wanted that to be better in a minute, but it took 6 weeks. I think it was the longest 6 weeks of my life. But it's better. And it's the same with healing in the body. Give it time. Abstain. There are some things that you must stop if you want to heal from diabetes. The refined sugar must stop. In fact, all forms of sugar. Once the colon is happy, once the pancreas has healed, then the person can start maybe having a little maple syrup or honey. But until that pancreas is totally healed, and when I mention the colon, as we looked at yesterday, the colon needs to be running well too, because that's where your waste is dumped. So that is also influencing your pancreas. So sugar must stop, wheat must stop, caffeine must stop. We had a guest, and every time I said this, he would just groan. If you're a coffee drinker, don't stop, or you won't be able to come to class tomorrow. If you're a coffee drinker and you have 3 cups of coffee a day, start having 3 half cups, then 3 third cups, then 3 quarter cups, and then maybe 2 quarter cups. You can ease off it very slowly. What caffeine does is it causes a crisis response in the body. And whenever you have a crisis response in the body, there is a release of more insulin to release more glucose into the cell, ready for the crisis, ready for the run of your life or the fight of your life. And most people don't realise the role that caffeine plays in diabetes. What must also stop is alcohol. It's a high sugar food, but not only is it a high sugar food, it is also a neurotoxin, and we need our brain cells. So these are some of the things that must stop if you want to conquer diabetes. Inhale. Genesis 2 verse 7, the Bible says that God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Did everyone get that? Nostrils. This was not mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Nostrils. The nostrils purify the air, warm the air, humidify the air, balances blood gases, and also pressurizes the air, making it perfect for the lungs. Mouth does not do any of that. Mouth is for talking, singing, it's for whistling, it's for eating, it's for drinking. Nose, and nose alone, is for breathing. And remember back on the cell, I'm a little bit scared to go back there in case I can't get back here at the moment. I'm still mastering my new electronic board. But do you remember when we went through the energy cycles in the cell, that when that cell has oxygen, it gives 18 times more energy. So the more you breathe through your nose, long, slow and deep, the more oxygen's available at the cellular level. And we're talking about the pancreas and its an ability to revive and to restore, and oxygen's an important part of that. Nutrition. Nutrition is vital. If we don't give the right fuel to our body, it cannot function and it cannot repair. So high fibre, that's all your plant foods. Generous proteins, that's your legumes, your beans. And my suggestion is eat them every single day. I eat them every single day. In fact, often I eat beans every meal. For breakfast this morning, what did I have for breakfast? I had a grapefruit, because I certainly do like grapefruit, and I had a Honeycrisp apple, and I had chia seed, and I had almonds, and I had some sourdough bread, and on that I had olive oil and avocado and brown lentils on top. So my meal was high fibre, generous proteins, great fats, and I did not get hungry for 5.5 hours. That food gives a steady, consistent delivery of fuel. What did I have for lunch? I had split pea soup for lunch, so there was another legume. I had some potatoes in that, and celery and carrot, and I had a big salad. Had some pecans, you call them pecans, we call them pecans, for dessert. That's an excellent meal for a diabetic. I had a very low carbohydrate diet. Why do I eat such a low carbohydrate diet? Because I love what it does. I have lots of energy, I sleep well, everything works, weight just stays the same. Do you know the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, prove all things. Prove it for yourself, try it, give it a go, see what it does. So the Bible says prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. I eat this way because I love what it does. Moderation. These are the sustain me principles. Moderation in all the good things. The nutritionists today are saying that the time-restricted eating is the best way to eat for a diabetic. What's the time-restricted eating? Eating twice in a 24-hour period, 6 hours apart. Huh? What were they saying 10 years ago? Oh, you've got to eat every 2 hours. Psalm 146 verse 3, put not your trust in princes, because sometimes they get it wrong. Who are the princes? They're the authorities in the field. Doesn't mean you don't go to them, doesn't mean you might not get their opinion, because that's what it is, an opinion. And what can you do with that opinion? You can take it or leave it, because it's our God-given right to choose what we do to our body. So did the authorities say, sorry, we got it wrong? No, they'll never say that. Have you noticed what they say? New research reveals. Do you know that time-restricted eating was advised in that little book, The Ministry of Healing, which was written, I think, in the late 1800s. This is not new. And do you remember the old saying, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, supper like a pauper? Where'd that saying come from? That's been a saying for hundreds of years. This is not new. Now they put another name on it, time-restricted eating. No, it's not new. You know what the proverb says? There's nothing new under the sun. But what they are finding with this time-restricted eating is that diabetics are coming off their medication. Because eating like this gives a steady, consistent, sure delivery of fuel. And remember, if there's a blood sugar level low between meals, take the crystal of Celtic salt and the glass of water, and it'll help release the glycogen stores. And by the way, when you've had your crystal Celtic salt and your glass of water, get on the exercise bike or do 20 push-ups. Did you do push-ups today? Sorry? I heard a yes. Only one though. If you can't do them on the floor, you can do ladies' push-ups. If you can't do them all on the floor, you can do push-ups on the wall to strengthen the core. Remember, the core helps digestion. The core strength holds you back into place, does so many things. Our massage therapists, they tell me we can tell the strength of the body by the strength of the core. And that's how we should lift. Have you seen how a 2-year-old lifts a ball? This is how they lift a ball off the ground. Is that right? How do we lift the ball off the ground, us adults? As soon as you bend that back, you weaken it. Look at the biggest bone in the muscle is the femur, biggest muscle mass is your quads. Why did God do that? Because we should lift and bend here. And our massage therapists, this is how they massage. Where are they massaging from? Here. Look after your back. Sorry, got off track a bit there. So moderation in when you're eating, moderation in the times. And as we looked at yesterday, the stomach needs that rest between meals. You can have someone eating very good quality food, but they're not accessing the nutrients out of their meal because they're eating too much. They're eating too many times a day. And the last one is exercise. And what exercise does, it does an amazing thing for diabetes. What exercise does, it increases blood supply to the pancreas, which helps to revive the pancreas. And the most effective form of exercise, and we're going to look at this in a little bit more detail when we look at the heart after the break, is the high intensity interval training. These are intervals of high intensity, intervals of recovery for a cycle. So 30 seconds is what the research shows, high intensity, 90 seconds recovery, done for a cycle of 6. Have you done the maths on that? That's about 15 minutes a day. If you don't have 15 minutes a day, it's time to assess what you do with your time. Start by writing down how much time you're on the computer, how much time you watch television, how much time you're on the phone. That's the first assessment you do. And you will quickly realise that you are spending more than 15 minutes on those devices. Is that right? So you do have time. It is the best insurance policy that you can make. So what I've got to do, and I hope that I can get back to my other screens. I did. Great. When you do the high intensity interval training, what's the high intensity? This is really high intensity. This is running for your life. This is walking very fast up a steep hill. This is on the exercise bar, going as fast as you can. That's the high intensity. Anything that gets the respiration up and increases heart rate. It's only for 30 seconds. If you don't think 30 seconds is long, try it. It's long. 90 seconds recovery. The recovery time is an indication of your fitness level. So what happens with that high intensity? It causes a release of these glycogen stores, which helps to balance your blood glucose levels. And if you run out of them, remember you've got your fat stores. But because this whole inside of the cell is working so much faster, extra receptor sites develop on the cell wall to take in more insulin and glucose. So you can reverse insulin resistance in a week by getting the carbohydrates right down, stopping the sugars, the wheats, eating a high fibre, generous protein and great fats, and implementing the exercise program, drinking more water. You can turn it around in a week. That's quite incredible, isn't it? So we had a man attend our program who was 62. He came to us because His doctors had said, we can do no more for you. He said, I've spent $1 million on my health in the last 10 years. This was probably about 8 years ago now. He came to us because he met a lady that said, I think that this retreat in Alabama could help you. He was on 90 units of insulin a day. He was on blood pressure meds, blood thinning meds. He was on statin drugs. He was carrying probably about 40 pound excess weight. His legs were swollen. He said, I won't be able to exercise. I said, that's right. But my suggestion is to get on the rebounder for 1 minute every hour and just do this. That's called the health bounce. And what it does is it stimulates the lymphatic system to get that fluid working through the body. I said, never drink more than a half a glass of water at a time, and drink it little by little by little over the day. He did 2 days on juices. The juices were mostly carrot, celery and apple juice, not a lot of sweet in the juice. And every day he was having a blood sugar level low, so he had to take a protein drink. We give a protein drink for the blood sugar level low. You see, why was he having a blood sugar level low? Because his 90 units of insulin allowed him to eat that. He wasn't eating that anymore. By the end of 2 weeks, he was down to 10 units of insulin a day, type 1 diabetic. He emailed me 3 months later. He said, I am off all my medication. He said, my doctors are astonished. I believe it's our duty to astonish our doctors. He said, remember what the doctors have said? We can do no more for you. And he went to the most expensive and the best specialists. He spent $1 million. Wow, he could have come to the health retreat twice a year for the next 20 years for that. Maybe more. I said to him, tell me about your exercise program. He said, I swim 30 laps of a pool a day. He said, I cycle 6 miles a day. I rebound 3 times a day. He said, I do exactly what you say. I have breakfast like a king. I have lunch like a queen. He said, and I don't eat at night. He said, I'm having fibre every meal. I'm having all the low glycemic fruits. He said, I'm having beans every day. He said, I have some nuts every meal. And I remember when he came, he said, anything you tell me to do, I will do. And he did it. Good illustration of choose your hard. You might think that's pretty hard, 30 laps of the pool a day, 6 miles a day. He said, this is at 3 months, he said, I've lost 25 pounds. When he went home, his wife, he's 62, she's 42. She said, this is your baby. I like my croissants and champagne. 3 months later, she's interested. She's got a new husband. He doesn't get irritated anymore. He doesn't snap at her anymore. He went back to full-time work. He's the CEO of a couple of big companies. He went back into the office and he said, I'm back. And they all cringed, but they had a different boss. He no longer yelled at them. He no longer got annoyed at them. You see, our brain can only hold a 2-minute supply of glucose at any one time. And when blood glucose levels go low, it's only 2 minutes and the brain's not getting fuel. That's the irritation, that's the grumpiness. He thought he was going to have to resign from his posts. He'd taken some long service leave to try and get himself better. And he got himself better. Actually, they remarried. She's interested now purely because of what she saw happened in her husband. And when they got married, they got the chef from the health retreat to cook the good food. He said, I've got a barbecue over there for my diehards that want their steaks. But he said, over here we've got the good food. But he had a lot of people interested in his food purely because of what had happened to him. Incredible story. It's a good illustration of choose your hard. Life was hard for him. He could hardly walk. He couldn't fly anymore, or his legs would swell. He was only 62 and he was looking at resigning from his major positions. Now he's back to full-time work. And no one can talk him out of this diet or lifestyle. He said, "I've got a new lease on life." He said, "I feel better at 62 than I felt when I was 40. Because actually it was just starting to develop, the result of this lush lifestyle that he was living. So it's a great illustration, choose your heart. And it's also a beautiful illustration of the body that we live in, its inbuilt ability to heal itself when you give it the right conditions. We're going to have a break now, and when we come back, we're going to look at the heart.